So thank you for doing this. It's good to be connected to you again, under different circumstances this time.
Yeah.
And so let's jump right into it. So this is going to be for the laugh button. So just tell me a little bit about how the podcast kind of came together. Now, did you have the idea, because you had podcasts before years ago, did you have the idea to kind of bring back a new podcast before the pandemic, or was that kind of happen because of it? How did that come about?
I always kind of thought about it. The thing I was jealous of seeing people do podcasts is like my two of my best friends, Dan Soder and Big J, they do the bonfire, and just them hanging out and being funny. And every time I go on it, like, it's so fun. And it's just, I don't know. It's like, I mean, for a comedian, it's a muscle being funny, and you got to keep it active. And so I always kind of thought about a podcast, but I was also touring very much. I was touring a lot. I just didn't have the time for it. And then, when this pandemic happened, it kind of opened up where it was like, all right, well, I guess I do have the time. And so I was like, let's give it a go. Let's see, let's see what happens. Let's see how it goes. And I've enjoyed it so far. So it's been, there was kind of like just everything kind of coming together. It's always been kind of an idea. And then when this happened, it was like, well, I guess it's time.
Right. Did you have a plan going into it of what you wanted the podcast to be? Or because when I listened to the first few episodes, it felt very kind of stream of consciousness, like you just sitting down and not knowing what it's going to be, but figuring it out as you go along. Was that kind of the goal?
Yeah, and that was the beginning for sure. I mean, I wanted to have a direction, and I knew the one thing that I did know is I know, with everything being so political out right now, and in my comedy, I'm not really political. You're just trying to be very funny for people and be a relief. So I wanted to do that. That was a big deal to me, to try to like just be funny for people. I mean, I think that's my duty. I'm not a guy that's going to tell you what to do to vote. I don't care. So I should be the person that you can go to when you need a break from all of that. I mean, it's all overwhelming. So I wanted to make sure I did a podcast that was just, I mean, the being funny was the main purpose of it, and trying to be funny, and then just talk about interesting things. And now we've found a formula where, like, first two episodes was a little bit looser, and then the last, I think, 2 or 3 have been like kind of on something. One was on money, one was on the one where you just put out today was on sports, and then we just kind of talk about broad things inside of that world. So it's at least giving us some direction. So it does, you don't want to be just aimlessly, just like where you're like, you kind of forget where you're going, and then you're
Right.
searching for these jokes. You want to, at least for the audience, to be like, all right, we have put some kind of structure into it. But, as far as the jokes go, yeah, there will be a lot more just off the top of the head, and when we talk about something. And so, really, I feel like kind of interesting and funny is a good combination.
Right. And going back to what you said, you didn't want to be that guy that, tell people who to vote for. You actually say that in the first episode where you talk about how you don't want to misuse your platform. And I responded to that really well when I heard you say that. Like, because I feel like, anyone runs the risk of that right now. I like that from the start, when you're figuring out what it is, you knew right away that's what it was going to be, no matter what, is that you didn't want to misuse what you're doing. Like, you didn't want to be that guy.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that you noticed it. It was, yeah, it's like that's all I knew almost, was like, I'm not doing this. I think just because you have a platform doesn't mean, look, when I read the laugh button, it would be annoying if I went on there and y'all were just like, here's politics all day. Like, if you
I
were
hate
like,
writing about them.
yeah,
I do.
it's like, there's plenty of it. We're in no dire need of just another opinion on whatever, but we are in dire need of just pure entertainment. There's not, like, that's even getting where movies and TV shows, and I mean, look, and if you're Bill Maher, it's like, yeah, that's your thing. People do go to him for that.
What happened?
I think people need a platform to uh, I think for me, people need a platform to just, come laugh and don't feel like you're going to get lectured.
Right. And I agree with that. And I think there is that thing of, everyone knows what we're going through. There's no one in the world, and I've heard you talk about this as well. It is no matter who you are, where you are in the world, there's not a single person that doesn't know what this is, which is very rare. It's very
Yeah.
rare for everybody to be in sync
Yeah.
on one thing,
Yeah.
like everyone
Yeah.
experiencing the same thing at one time. And so everyone knows what it is. Why not let them forget about it?
That's a huge look. Mental, like we got to do a show at Zany's. Then they shut back down, but they were open for a little bit. And I had some COVID jokes, but my jokes are obviously none of them are anything crazy. It's just like commenting on the kind of funniness of the stuff that you have to go through with COVID. I just did a little bit, and then I got into my old act. But the relief that you could feel from the crowd, that they were just so like, for 1 hour, they just weren't like having something pop on their phone saying the world's falling apart. Like it was just they could get away for a second. And I think that's super important. And it's the mental health of all that kind of stuff is like you need it. And people, and everybody and most all my fans like get it. I would have occasionally some people being like, you should say something, whatever, but it's like, why? Like, why you just want me to say something? You don't care what I say. Yeah, what I say doesn't really matter. No one should be listening to me anyway. To like, if you're having a political opinion and you're wondering what I'm doing, like that's a big problem. Like there's way smarter people that you should go listen to. So that's the whole idea of this, and it is just give people a break. You should be able to like when you drive to work, be like, all right, today I can't. I've hit plenty of moments where you're like, I took social media off my phone. I just couldn't. It was too much. It's too much to all day long just be like, bah, bah, and you're like, you get depressed, you get sad, and you're like, this is insane. So I want to be that break.
How long have you had it off your phone for?
Maybe 3 weeks. I had like, so it's. I mean, I still catch myself kind of like looking at Twitter through the browser or something. It's hard to get it, but it definitely makes it where it's not as like, I'm not just scrolling. It's not as like appealing to look at through the browser. And so you're not just like flashing through it, and you just feel kind of like, you just feel like a break. And I mean, this stuff makes you want to go get like a BlackBerry, like just go get a flip phone and just be like, I want to be. When James Harden, they said he doesn't have internet, I was like, that's the greatest thing I've ever heard. If you know, James Harden's a basketball player for the Rockets, but he wore the wrong mask and people got mad at him for whatever, because people get mad at everything. But it was funny. His buddy was like, he doesn't have the internet, so he doesn't know. And you're like, that's how we all should be living. He's living a much happier life. He's like, just doesn't know what's going on.
Right, and that's kind of the thing is, and I want to go back to what you're talking about when you said you went to perform stand up. What was that like? Because you're the first person I've talked to that has performed kind of. I don't want to say post pandemic because it's still going on. We'll say in the pandemic, and once things start opening up, you're one of the first people that I've talked. You're the first person I've talked to that have gone back out there. What were your thoughts going into it? Like, are you thinking, like, I mean, are you nervous at all going into it? Were you not sure how the crowds would be, or did you have a good feeling?
Yeah, I didn't know the crowds were going to be. You are nervous just because you've been locked up in your home for 3 months up to that point. And so it was nervous kind of being out. It was right when like some restaurants were kind of opening. So it was all social distancing. All the tables were all kind of spread out and all that stuff. So you're worried that like, is the energy going to be weird? Everybody's kind of spread out. Comedy clubs are usually packed. So I didn't really know how it was going to be. And I was a little nervous about doing it. But, for us as the comics, we come in through the back, go in the green room. It's just you're around the other comics that are in there. In the crowd, like, I mean, I think they did a really good job with how they did it. And the crowd was great. I mean, I was very relieved to feel, it was nice to hear people laugh, and it felt like people were really getting a break from all the stuff that they've had to go through. And I mean, I think some of the audience was nervous. I mean, everybody was nervous. It's like, I mean, when you don't go outside for 3 months, and then then you're like back together with other people. It's insane. So it was definitely kind of crazy. It's like watching a movie. You watch it, when you watch a movie, you just see people shake hands now in a movie, and you're like, that seems like, you're like, whoa, that's crazy.
There are a few moments like that, yeah. What were you, that brings up, what were you watching during the pandemic? What were you kind of watching during all of it?
I just went through all the Mission Impossibles. Every one of them, all pretty good. And I've seen some have been forever ago, but it's like I watched Contagion too. That's great. Like
How was
dude,
that?
it's what's happening right now. It's wild. Everybody should go watch it. It's so crazy that it's like, that movie's old, and not old, but 10 years or something, whatever it was. It's just so crazy to be like, it's all kind of the stuff that's happening now, and like how they're tracking everybody. It's pretty wild. But I watched that. But Mission Impossible was one that was, my brain got turned off. I just turned on, just a fun action movie that you can just be like oblivious to the world for a little bit, and you just go enjoy. And I think that's the thing now, that's, you're going to be kind of chasing like those kind of movies that are just like, there's no agenda to it. There's just straight up like a bunch of people are going to die in this movie, and we're going to show some cool stuff, and you can just be like, all right, and then you sit back. But yeah, I just finished I think last night I finished the 7th one. So there's a bunch of them.
There's a lot of them. I think that as well. Like, people want to feel nostalgic right now. Like, what makes them feel happy? Like, that's, and that's why there were so many, people revisiting shows. That's why the top trending shows on Netflix were like, in movies, were like from 20 years ago or so. People just wanted to go to that place.
Yeah.
And so, going back to the podcast, what is, other than the obvious, what has changed since you last did a podcast about kind of the environment itself?
Oh, it's a studio. It's night and day. When I first did it with Giannis Pappas and Chris Laker, we did the It Could Be Better podcast. That was very early on, when like podcasts were coming out, like 2010. And it's just the commitment to it. I mean, when we did that back then, obviously some podcasts were big, but podcasts they weren't a thing that was like, this thing's going to blow you up or whatever. So it was just the way you looked at it back then was very different. It was hard for us to get together, and I think we were very loose with the idea now. And now doing this podcast, I mean, I have, which shot with 4 cameras, like we really make it look really good. And I want it to look, it's on YouTube, and I want it to look very, very good. And so it's easy to watch. And so, I mean, just the production of it now is night and day. And just what I know what podcasts are now, you see that podcasts are, they're making a TV show, essentially. Like, there's like work to it. So now it's just, I don't know, you just know what it is. I'm a better comic than I was back then when I did it. You know your voice more than I did back then. So all of that stuff, and it's nice to get to do it. I got Brian Bates and Aaron Weber on the show, two local comics from Nashville, both very funny, and I'm friends with both of them. So it's very fun to kind of have a back and forth and just go. And so yeah, it's been great.
It's an excuse to see your friends again after all these time inside.
It's nice. It is nice it's nice to have some, it's just nice to be funny again, just to be funny. And, it's fun. It's very fun to be funny. It's very fun to hang out with comedians. So it's nice to get to do that, once a week.
Was that weird after, a few months inside, when you had to start, kind of using the platform and kind of using your voice again to be funny? Was that a weird adjustment going into it? Just kind of being like, all right, I guess I'm doing this again. Like, what were you thinking? Not so much to stand up, but going into the podcast. As far as
what's funny is, so I shot a pilot last year for ABC that did not go anywhere, and it's gone. But that almost helped me like do a lot of things, like talking into a camera, and that kind of stuff is like something like Bert Kreischer. Bert Kreischer is so good at being very funny into a camera. He just knows how to do it. He did it with his travel show. He's very, very good at it. And it's something that you do need to learn to do as a comedian. We can be like, some of us can be, we're on stage, we do our act, we don't go outside of our act. We're like, this is what we do. And so when I got to do that pilot, and then it's like, then honestly doing some of these Zooms, it's like you almost kind of was training yourself to be able to talk to a camera a little bit more. And so then when I was able to do this podcast, it's like just the experience of talking to an audience that you can't hear, it's you just kind of learn how to do it more. And so I think all the stuff that I have done from that first podcast to this podcast has helped me be better, helped me to have better energy on these things. I was always get crushed on by commenters. My energy is so low and it doesn't seem like he wants to be there. And then I would, it would always make me mad. But then some of them were right. It's like my energy was too low. And so I was trying to get where I can raise my energy without getting out of what I am. Like, I don't want to be this guy that yells and moves around, but my energy definitely can get higher in my world. So it's like learning how to do that. And I think I've learned, and I'm going to continue to learn how to be funny and how to talk into a camera and all that kind of stuff. And you get a good gauge on what is funny without even it getting out. As a comedian, you can kind of tell, like, all right, that should be pretty funny. And then you can tell when you're like, that's probably not.
And that's something people don't think about when they're going into comedy. They just think about, I'm going to, go into stand-up. They don't think about, all right, how will this stand-up kind of translate to other mediums? How will it translate to the camera? So people don't really think about that. Like, and so it's interesting to hear that.
No, they don't. I mean, they don't, there's you as a comedian, you can end up doing a bunch of stuff. And I mean, I kind of learned seeing Bert. That's why Bert's so good with Instagram. So good, like talking in his phone and bringing you into his world, and you feel like you're hanging out with him. And it's a very, I still feel very weird talking into my phone. And so I need, it's like you need to learn. But I mean, I don't know how much I like it. You got to like it too. But I like this. I like talking to the camera, and I like doing that kind of stuff. So I think that showcases what you do, and it helps you be able to talk. I mean, our job is talking and talking for a long time, which is funny doing the shows. When I do these live stand-up shows, being on stage, I could feel my voice get tired. I've never felt that. And that was something that was interesting to be like, oh, my voice is like tired after talking for an hour. It's like, it starts, and you're like, oh, because I haven't had the pressure of talking straight for 1 hour. And that was like something that was kind of interesting. I just thought about that.
It only takes time. I mean, it's just something that comes over time.
Yeah.
Have you been writing during all this? Like, what is that like when you, like, leading up to it? Because were you working on a special kind of before everything hit? Were you working on a new hour? Like, how does that, how did it change?
I was planning on taping a special probably this fall. And so I had it kind of lined up pretty good where I was geared up to the summer would have been, I mean, up to summer, I was like out. I mean, I was going to do like 50 dates or something. And then in the fall, I'd have probably done another 50. And so I would have probably taped it sometime in that fall, then turned it over, and then hopefully it would have came out whenever, early next year. And then just, I was you had the rotation of when you're building your new hour. So I already basically had my new hour. I mean, I would have probably tightened some stuff up, maybe grabbed a new joke here or there, but roughly my new hour was there and ready to go. So I haven't written a ton of new stuff. I mean, I have some COVID stuff, nothing too long, but I figured if I tape a special, I'll probably have to address it in some way. And then, and then when I did some of those shows, I had maybe a couple new ideas. It's hard to write during this time because you don't really have an outlet to try it,
Right.
And you really need to be saying these jokes. So, and since I had, the way I kind of work is when I need an hour and I know I need a new jokes, is like my brain like kind of gets going, and I'm doing shows during that time. And so you're in a constant search mode for new ideas. and they kind of come. And then when I get that new hour, my brain almost kind of shuts off, where it doesn't really, I'm not as much searching for material. And so it's hard for me to come up with stuff during this time. So I was at that point now where I already had that new hour. And so I was kind of like, during this, I have a couple things, new ideas that if I can get back on the road, and like I need to be consistently on the road. Like it's not like one weekend I can go try it. You need to be where I'm doing shows every weekend, and then I can just put them in the middle of my hour and try this stuff. So, but I'm hoping the podcast brings some stuff. I'm hoping the podcast brings some new ideas, and I think I got one out of yesterday. I was thinking of something, and I kind of tried it. So I'll see. But yeah, so right now I kind of have the new hour, and then I'll be hoping to, once we can get going again, I'll try to get it back into shape, and then hopefully take the special.
Right. And it is interesting to me that there are people that are doing that are filming their special now. Like I think there were a few that did it at a drive-in, filmed a special. That's interesting to me that after 3 months of not being on the road, now you're going out there and doing a special. That's interesting. And so I agree with you. I think you have to go out there and kind of workshop it again. I mean, it's been a few months. You probably have to go back on the road and do that again.
Yeah, I mean, you want to get it out. You want to get a special out, but it's like I have to tell myself too. I talked to my managers about it, where it was like I'm like, well, I just want to do one. Let me go do I'll do one wherever, But then it's like you don't want to get so wrapped up in wanting to do something now because I want to work now, So right now I'm like I'll do whatever, and then it's like, well, if it doesn't go good or sound good or the audience is weird because they're in cars and I can't hear them and all these things, it's like I need to still protect that special and make sure that it gets the best release and I give it the best shot at being good versus just trying to it takes a long time to get an hour worth of material. So I gotta, how much I want to go be like, I'll go tape it wherever. I also need to be like, well, don't just go shoot some awful special and it's bad because you're in a weird scenario versus, versus just waiting and, being like, all right, I'll do it when we can.
Right, that'll be interesting. It would be a jarring 5 years from now if you're watching a special and there's 50 people in a 300-seat audience. You're gonna know exactly what you're watching. It's just gonna feel a little weird in a few years.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be nuts. Well, hopefully they'll get back, and then you might see special shot in comedy clubs again.
Hopefully.
That might be better than a theater. Just if theaters are too big, it's but a comedy club, they can spread them out, and it's it doesn't look as weird. But yeah, who knows?
I kind of miss the old comedy club specials from the 80s and stuff before they started doing them in theaters. I kind of miss those a little bit, the old HBO ones.
Yeah. They're good. Yeah, they're good. I like a nice theater special, but I mean, sometimes it is nice to mix it up, and you can see when you see one in a club, and you're like, oh, this is cool. I mean, truthfully, it's some should be so much focused on the comic that it's it's almost like it doesn't really matter where it's at. But our last one, I try to shoot where it's you don't really, you see some back of the heads audience, you see some audience, but you're trying not to do just a ton of you don't want to do a bunch of cutaways to audiences. It's so the person at home watching it feels like they're sitting in the crowd.
Right. I mean, and there are some where there's a lot of cutaways, and it does feel a little different. I mean, it reminds you you're watching a special. It really does.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's good to kind of be taken away from that. And so once it's all said and done, are you working on other stuff other than podcasts? Are you still writing? Because you said the ABC thing didn't go last year. Are you thinking of other ideas for possibly the future?
Yeah. I mean, I'm definitely always trying to think about it, kind of talking to some writers and trying to see if something can line back up to try to do another show. I still want to try to do a show, a TV show. So, definitely have other stuff kind of going on, and and then we're just see what happens. But yeah, I'm that door is always kind of open, and I just try to find the best fit, to be paired up with someone that can help ride the show that's really good, and see what happens. I mean, that's such a long, trying to do a network show. It's such a long process. I mean, that last show was like 2 years of like trying to then finally getting the pilot just to get told no. It's crazy. It's like it's unbelievable how it works. They spend all this money on this pilot and they're like, nah, and you're like, all right, and you got to
Can
just
you
move
shop
on.
it around?
Yeah, we tried. I mean, you try to give it, but it's so hard to, that doesn't work as often as it might seem, where you shoot it for one place and then you go try somewhere else, and then you've essentially, one place has already told you no, so the other places are like, well, we don't probably want it, and you end up kind of making it for that network. That's the other problem too. It's not like you make it as broad. You kind of make it for like the audience that ABC has, and you're trying to. So when you try to go to NBC, it's like, I don't know if I've never really thought about it until I was kind of making this show. But when you think about it, if you went and make a show for CBS and then a show for ABC, then a show for NBC, if you look at their shows, you're like, oh yeah, they are different, like how they're shot, what they are. So you end up really making a show that's made for a network. So when you try to go somewhere else, it doesn't usually fit like it should. I mean, Netflix shows, Hulu, like everything's kind of, made specifically for that platform.
Well, I agree with you, because during the quarantine, I would watch things on like Hulu and Netflix, like old sitcoms from the 90s, and I could immediately tell what network it was on without even having to look it up. Like, you can kind of feel it. You can.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. It's very funny I mean, look at Seinfeld, Will and Grace, Friends, like they're all NBC, all kind of feels like that. But then King of Queens, Everybody Loves Raymond, like you can picture the difference. It's almost like I don't know if I can even tell you what the difference is, but I know there's a difference.
Right.
Yeah.
Like that watching Roseanne, it's like, all right, this is definitely ABC, and just that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and so what was it? Was it kind of like a single camera, or was it an audience, or like the old?
It was multicam, an audience, yeah.
Yeah.
Multicam, like an audience, like an Everybody Loves Raymond type show, and it was very cool, an unbelievable experience to get to shoot it, and all the actors we had were amazing, and so it was, yeah. I mean, everybody couldn't have been nicer, and it was truly all the people working on the show. I mean, it was a truly wild experience, and it's one that makes you want to do it again. You're definitely like, yeah, I would love to do this. So hopefully,
Right.
hopefully we will.
Hopefully, and it is interesting, like that idea, because it would have been one of the few multicam shows, because they're not doing that much right now.
They act like they want to. Well, what's funny is they might do it now with COVID, because the new ways, because it's a set, you're on one set, and so it's like the new way stuff is shot is like they need to contain it, and so they need to contain the people that work on the set. But who knows? I mean, yeah, multicams are, the reason they like doing them is like they're cheaper to make in the long run, because the set is already there, versus like Modern Family, where you got to go to a bunch of different places and shoot stuff. But yeah, I mean, it's like you take a gamble on which one they're going to want, and you hope it works out, and if it doesn't, but you hopefully go try again.
It'll be interesting if they bring back the laugh track that they haven't used in like 15 years, because they can't have an audience now.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah. There's professional laughers.
Are there?
There's like,
really?
Yeah, when we would do the run throughs, like just before your taping, just for us to practice, they hire people that are professionally that laugh professionally, and so they just sit in the crowd and they can laugh on cue, and they laugh on everything, and so it's like you learn how to laugh. So when you're acting and it's in front of a live audience, you can like know when to wait for how long they laugh. So you get used to that timing. It's unbelievable.
It's so funny. I've never thought of that. I never thought that would have to be a thing.
It'd be like 8 people. They just sit in the stands and they just laugh very loudly. And they know, and they can just, and they all have great laughs. They're all very nice people. They laugh every day. They laugh professionally. So they live a very good life.
I love that. So wrapping up, are there any other? You had mentioned that one weekend you did. Are you have any other gigs coming up, or are you still waiting for more to open up at this point?
Yeah, not now. Just waiting for them to open up. I mean, I imagine my tour is gonna, it seems like everything's kind of keep getting pushed back, and so, it's like everybody. It's a kind of a day by day kind of thing, and so you don't know. I mean, but it's. I mean, there's nothing that I'm gearing up for right now. That's like, all right, we're about to go. So we'll see what happens. And I mean, I think best case scenario would be if some clubs can open and I can get back and I can get to some of these clubs. But right now it's just a matter of, right now it's the podcast. That's all. That's all there is. So
And that's great, though. That's great that people can, fans that kind of weren't able to come out to the tour are now able to hear you on a weekly basis again.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's been fun.
I love that. Well, listen, it was great getting to talk to you again today.
Yeah, man. Great seeing you guys. Thank y'all so much.
Absolutely. We're always when I texted Matt and said that you wanted to do something, he said we always love having you on. So
Yeah, you guys have been the best. So I appreciate it.
absolutely. We love having you. Thank you so
All
much.
right. Hopefully see y'all soon.
Hopefully, yeah, hopefully.
Yeah.
I mean, I know we had a bunch of stuff. He was telling me he had so much stuff planned this year that kind of got canceled a little bit. So
Yeah, we would have all been in JFL probably right now.
probably.
Close to now. Yeah.
I've never been. I was actually
Oh, it's
looking
great.
to go this year.
It's a fun, yeah. It's a fun time. I honestly think we might have been there right now, if not, or maybe a week. But it's July. It's usually in July, end of
Yeah,
July.
I think it
Maybe
would have been.
last week.
We would have been doing this in person in
Yep.
Montreal right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Together.
All right. I'll see you guys. Thank
All
y'all.
right. Take care. Bye.